Welcome to Saints and Sevens, a Trench Crusade community podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Doe. Normally we'd have Jesse Aiken with us, however, he has unfortunately been struck by the plague of the Black Grail and is down for a little bit. He's in a speedy recovery and he'll be back with us in the next episode. So today you're just going to have me, and we're going to be talking about the campaign system that's embedded in Trench Crusade. Give you a little bit of information about what it'll look like to kind of run your own campaign, kind of walk you through the specifics of how that system kind of works and some of the unique things that Trench Crusade brings to the table in comparison to other types of campaign systems and games. Now, before we get to that, though, I want to remind you we have a Patreon, and over at the Patreon, you can support however you like over there. We do have a new patron this week. Wanted to shout out. It's Just Physics. Join over in the Hell Knight level. Thanks for coming and supporting us. We really appreciate you and everything that you do. All of our patrons for taking care of us and helping offset the cost of the show. And over at the Patreon, you'll get access to all of our extra content, private Discord, and all the wonderful things that are going on over there. Already got a pretty good community over there talking and chatting and talking about lists and trading STLs and all kinds of good stuff. So feel free to check it out if you'd like to support. Don't if you don't want to. It's all good. I also have YouTube over there, and everywhere that you listen to podcasts, you can listen to our show, which you're obviously listening to right now, so we appreciate that. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us in any of the comments sections on any of the platforms, Discord, or email us at saintsandsevens@gmail.com. Now, without further ado, let's get to the campaign system. One of the unique things about Trench Crusade that sets it apart from a lot of other games in the grimdark aesthetic and genre is the robust campaign system that they wrote into the game. Now, we've talked about it in previous podcasts that a number of the game developers that are involved with the game are coming out of Games Workshop and other game systems, and have a long-standing history of some campaign work in games like Mordheim, for instance. If you're not familiar with that, feel free to give it a look. It was a game under Games Workshop that had a lot of kind of cult following, but has had historically poor or unbalanced, not to say poor, but unbalanced rule systems that there's been a large community, which we'll talk about later over at the Trench Shrine, that has come through and done a lot of house ruling to make it much more playable and enjoyable. Well, the designers that worked in Mordheim definitely got it right this time in Trench Crusade. So you've played a couple pickup games, you figured out the warband that you like, and now you want to find out where the meat and potatoes of this game is, and it's going to be in this campaign system. Currently, some of the competitions that you've seen out at some of the larger gaming conventions like Nova, Adepticon, those kinds of things for the US, and those other ones that are located overseas, they've been doing competitive campaigns. So it's going to be kind of in the same genre, or the same element of the game that you would be able to get an opportunity to play in. So the way that basically it works is if you have the Trench Companion app, you can open that up. You can follow along if you like. We're kind of go down each one of the bullet points and kind of talk through them, kind of an overview of what it would look like, walk you through some of the elements of that, and then kind of discuss how executing campaigns can work and how you can do it in like an ongoing narrative and that kind of a thing. So you want to start a campaign. So basically you're going to get a few people together. Could be 2 people, could be 20 people. It doesn't really matter. And you're going to start with your warband. Your warband start at 700 ducats. That's going to be your point level for your warband. It's just flat 700, no glory, nothing like that. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to pick a patron. So the patron is relevant because later on in the campaign arc, if you will, you are going to be, during the exploration phase, rolling for all of these additional things like advancing your characters and exploration and treasure and all this kinds of stuff. And on some of those lists, you have an opportunity to get what's called basically as a patron benefit. And the patron benefit is going to be based off of whoever your actual patron is. And each of the factions that are in Trench Crusade belong to, and the sub-factions as well, belong to one of the patrons. So, for instance, you have the Learned Saint, and the Learned Saint has a whole lot of factions and sub-factions under them. So if your war band is from the Cavalcade of the 10th Plague, the Ire Rangers, Expeditionary Force of Abyssinia, Kingdom of Albia, Assault Detachment, the Papal States, Procession of the Sacred Affliction, the Free State of Prussia, New Antioch, Red Brigade, Trench Pilgrims, and the War Pilgrimage of Saint Methodius, any one of those, you're able to select the Learned Saint as your patron. And it goes all down the list. You've got about 9 or 10 different patron saints currently as it stands. I'm sure we might eventually see some expansion on this. And then, so when you get your Saint, say we picked the Learned Saint, let's stick with that one. Then under that Saint's entry, you're going to have a number of benefits that you can choose from. So, for instance, a Learned Saint would give you the option to choose Favored by God. So at the end of each game, your warband gains an additional glory for each model with a skill in the battlefield. Or Pennies from Heaven. At the end of each game, your warband gains d6 times 5 additional ducats for each model with a skill. Or Walk with God, one skill from any skill table that you can pick. You can give it to a model. So the patron will give you access to these additional abilities should they come up when you are rolling in the exploration phase. Okay, so it's an easy pick. You kind of look through what the different things are that are going on there, decide which one you want to do, and go ahead and pick up your patron. So then you're going to go into the game, right? So you've got your partners, your buddies, whoever you'll be playing this game with. Everyone's got a 700 ducat list, and you're ready to rock and roll. So the general overarch of the campaign system is 12 games. So you play 11 that are picked from the scenario tables that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. And the 12th game is a decided game called the Great War. It is the capstone game for your campaign. And there's some guidance in there if you have like an odd number of players about how you're going to manage and work around that, but it's not very complicated. So basically, the campaign system for victory effectively is going to be based around campaign victory points. You're awarded 15 CVPs if you win a game. You're given 7 if you lose, and it's 10 for each if there's a draw. And you keep track of that. And additionally, there's going to be things like glory that will also come into play. But effectively, this is what's going to give you the bulk of your victory points, your campaign victory points. And at the end of the game, after 12 games of the campaign, or should you be playing a shorter campaign, whatever number you settle on, then you are able to total it up, and whoever has the most campaign victory points at that point wins the campaign. So you have the opportunity to adjust the amount of games you want to play. You could take it down to 4 games. You could take it all the way up to 24 games, whatever you want to do. You have the ability to kind of shift it around, but the baseline game as they have set it up is designed for 12 games. So after you have got your 700 ducat warband and you've got your patron saint picked out, you now know what the scoring system looks like, and then we're going to start just by playing games. So the way that they have is they have 3 scenario lists basically that you're able to pick from. All you're going to do is roll a d6. When you're ready with your partner, it'll give you the scenario you're going to play, and you just will click on the scenario if you're in the Trench companion app, or you can look it up if you're actually in the paper rulebook, which by the way is really cool. It's got some great art in there, and it'll give you the framework of the scenario that you're going to play. What's really cool about the scenarios in Trench Crusade, and we've kind of touched on this previously in previous episodes lightly, is that they're very asymmetrical a lot of times. So you'll have scenarios where you might be able to only pick 2/3 of your warband that you bring to the table, or you have to field all of your elites and only X amount of other units that you roll and check on, things like that. It's not always a pitched battle of force versus force, or it might be a pitched battle, but then you might be in the instance where the board setup is asymmetrical, and one side has, embattlements and guns and trenches on their side, whereas the other one is coming across open fields with mines in them or something along those lines. So it's pretty cool. It's very narrative. So you'll have 3 charts that you're going to roll on for your scenarios, but they're separated by how many games you're playing. So for instance, the scenario list table, early campaign is going to be rolled on for battles 1 through 3. That will have Claim No Man's Land, Hunt for Heroes, The High Ground, Relic Hunt, Supply Raid. And then on all of these lists, if you roll a 6, whoever has gotten fewer games in gets to basically choose one of the scenarios that you play instead. Mid-campaign is going to be for battles 4 through 8. And again, keep in mind this is for a 12-round campaign. It's going to have Hunt for Heroes, Armored Train, Trench Warfare, Claim No Man's Land, and Dragon Hunt. So you've got a couple of repeats from the previous list. And then you're going to jump up to the end game, battles 9 through 11, Trench Warfare, Dragon Hunt, From Below, Fields of Glory, and Don't Breathe. And then last but not least, on the 12th game, you're going to play the Great War. Now, what's interesting here is when it comes to the campaign forces, one of the other things that builds throughout the game is your warband threshold value and your field strength. So your warband for each game progressively will increase, and that's your threshold value is basically how many ducats, how many points you can have in your army, and then or your warband. And then the field strength, which is also correlative to each game in the progression throughout the campaign and also increases as you go, is how many models you can field. So what that looks like is, say game 1 of the campaign, you're bringing your 700 point list. You've decided to go extremely wide, which if this is your first time talking with us or listening to the show and hearing us talk about wargaming, wide is basically means like lots of models, whereas we might also refer to a tall list or tall warband, which means fewer models, typically with greater like individual impact on the board. So say you have a wide list, lots of models that you bought for very cheaply for 700 ducats. So what that leaves you at is, and game 1, the threshold value is 700 ducats. The field strength is 10. So you can only field 10 models. So if your 700 ducat list has, I don't know, 13 models in it, for instance, you're only going to be able to bring 10 of them to the game that you play. So that's something you want to think about as you build your warband and also as you hit the other and later steps throughout the game and as your warband continues to grow, of where you're buying models for your warband and how much battle kit you're putting on them, because at some point you're going to be limited by how many models you can put on the field. So you might as well be upgrading like battle kit and things like that. Because generally speaking, a lot of the times later on in the game, you're just going to be drowning in ducats. Like you're just going to get a lot of them through the exploration phase and stuff like that. So you're probably going to have money to buy extra battle kit and stuff. So basically, if you run this all the way up the chain at 1200, you're going to be at 1800 threshold and 22 field strength. So basically 1800 ducat warband, 22 models is the limit of what you could put on the field. Now you're not required to put that limit on the field. You could put 3 models on the field if you wanted to. It doesn't really matter. You'll just be limited by the amount of threshold of ducats for that warband. So that you're going to take that in consideration depending on what round in the campaign you are in. And the threshold value also matters because there's another element later in the campaign system that allows you to basically catch up, which is something that like Mordheim didn't have, what I would almost say the grandfather predecessor of this campaign system, where it was very easy in Mordheim to fall behind your opponents or the other people you were playing with in the campaign, and then you were just kind of out of the game, and it kind of just was a miserable experience. So what they've done with this instead is there's a catch-up mechanism, which we'll get to a little bit later, and that is impacted by the threshold values. That's all you need to know at this stage in the conversation, is that the threshold value will dictate some things later on in the game when you're using that catch-up mechanism, should you decide you need to use it. Now, so after we've established that, we know how many models we're bringing, we've got our 700 points list. A couple of things you need to know is there's something called Glorious Deeds. Every scenario that you look at in Trench Crusade is going to have Glorious Deeds attached to it. These are like super crazy things you're able to do. Like you have a guy who was downed 3 times by the same model but was never taken out of action or something like that. Or you have the lowest cost model in your warband killed the most expensive model the most expensive model in your opponent's warband, for instance. Like that would get you a Glorious Deed. And it changes from scenario to scenario, but there's a handful of money on each one that you can go after. So what that earns you is you get a victory point towards deciding whoever wins the game. For whenever you get a Glorious Deed, it gets you 4 things. If it was a model with the elite keyword, meaning not a basic troop, that carries out the Glorious Deeds, that they receive an experience point, and this is relevant later on when it comes to character progression. You gain a glory point. This is one of the primary ways that you gain glory in campaign mode. And then later on, there's a promotion pool it's like a dice pool that you build to see who is able to get experience points and things like that. And we'll get to that in a minute. But you get to add an extra D6 to that pool for every Glorious Deed that you acquire. So glory points are basically a secondary form of currency, if you will, in the game, like a ducat. But what the glory points do is it unlocks specific glorious items, and these are going to be like that you could purchase, like super like cool glorious items that are typically really awesome, like Samson's jawbone or something along those lines, that just do really crazy stuff in the game that you're able to purchase later on during the quartermaster step, which we'll get to in a little bit. And it also unlocks the ability for you to be able to hire mercenaries, because mercenaries there's a set of faithful and a set of fallen mercenaries, some that kind of overlap both sides, that you can purchase, but they can only be purchased for glory points, not ducats. So it doesn't matter how many ducats you have. If you don't have, you could have 10,000 ducats, but if you don't have, 4 glory, you're not going to be able to hire one of these mercenaries. And it's the same thing with weapons. There are certain weapons that are basically glorious, costed weapons or glorious items for your warband, and this can change on your faction battle kit list as far as what is glory and what is not. So if you refer back to the Carcass Front episode that we did, you'll remember that when we discussed, I believe it was the Heretic Naval Raiders, the fallen faction in the Carcass Front, they're able to get access to submachine guns for ducats instead of glory. And that would be a prime example of a faction-specific battle kit, right? That would change. Everyone else has to pay glory for this weapon, this machine gun. However, certain factions get it naturally, so they don't have to. So that's something you'd be using glory points for. And that would be the end of kind of the need-to-know stage. And then you go and you play your game. So you've played your campaign game. You're at 700 ducats. You've run your 10 models out there. Because you ran a full list of 10. And you've had a great game. You've tallied up your victory points. And now you're going to go to kind of what's the campaign phase of the game. Okay, so this means there's going to be a number of steps that you're going to go through. They're all very clearly outlined in the Trench Companion app with like little drop downs that you can click on that'll walk you through each one of the phases. And I'll give a shout out to the Trench Companion app. They have a fantastic campaign manager inside the Trench Companion app that will track your warband, and you enter your games that you've fought and who your opponents were and who's participating in the campaign. It tracks all of your injuries, all of your glory, all of the ducats, everything that you do along the span of your campaign is going to be tracked within the Trench Companion app, and it's really, really cool. There's a little bit of like fiddliness getting your warband into the overall campaign based on whoever's managing that campaign, but it's not bad. It's not like any crazy barrier to entry or anything like that. It's just it'll take a little minute to get everything kind of updated and synced up. And then you'll enter a game result, and then your opponent will have an opportunity to approve it, and then all those that information will be uploaded into the cloud, and it'll update your stats and everything, and then whoever's running that campaign is going to be able to actually advance the rounds and everything like that. So it'll track what round you're in and thresholds and all those kinds of things. So anyways, back to the campaign phase. So you've done your first game during the campaign. Now, this is the post-game phase of activity that you're going to go through, which is going to involve some rolling, okay? So the first thing you're going to do during the campaign phase is you're going to handle the trauma step. And basically, for every model on your warband that was taken out of action at any point during the game, so not ones that were downed, but the ones that were physically taken out of action by, like the high results, the 9 and ups and things like that, that took your model out of action, they're going to have to be rolled the trauma step. So this is treated differently. If it's a troop, basically you're going to roll on a d6, and as long as you don't roll a 1 or 2, they're good to go. Pat them on the back, get back in there, fella. If it's a 1 or 2, they're either very seriously injured or dead, and they're going to actually be removed from your warband roster. If a model is lost this way, they're going to lose their battle kit. Okay, so anything that's on them is going to go the way of the buffalo. It's going to be lost to the trenches or the fields, wherever you're at. An elite model is a little bit different. So if you look at your elite models, and this is relevant because the status, this keyword of elite, can change because it can be given to a troop if they get promoted because of their actions, okay? So you might have like a trench pilgrim, for instance, who's just a lowly troop, who might get, buffed up to an elite model based on promotions later on in the game. So they'll get that keyword, so that could come up later for them. But if an elite model, a model with the elite keyword, that was taken out of action during the game, instead you're going to roll what they are calling a D66. So what this means, all this means is, you're going to take 2d6, or you're going to take 1d6 and roll it twice. However it works, that's most convenient for you. Use 2 different colored d6, whatever. But the point is, one of them is going to count as the 10 space, one of them is going to count as the single space, and that's going to be your number. So for instance, if you had 2d6 and you rolled them, and you got a 5 and a 4, your roll would be 54, and you would look on the injury list for that and see what happens. Not super complicated. But what that does is it allows them basically on the trauma table to give you a wider variety of things that can happen. And this could be injuries, this could be permanent death, this could be any number of things that could happen to them that will affect them in game. And if the model's killed, like I said, all of the battle kit is lost once they're gone. And again, talking about elites here, if an elite is taken out of action, they receive a battle scar. Battle scars basically it'll be marked on the character or the individual in your warband. It'll be marked on their entry on your warband list. And you need to keep track of that because when they receive their third battle scar, they're going to be deemed unfit for duty and they'll be removed from your warband roster because of excessive injuries and things like that. Now this is an instance where you can add their battle kit and their glory items back to your arsenal on your warband roster versus when a troop is taken out of action by injury. If they're taken out of action and killed and removed from your warband because of injury roll and it's because of an injury, then they're removed. But if an elite receives their third battle scar, meaning they basically lived through whatever injury they got, still got to go back to fight, and this has happened to them 3 times, you get all of their stuff back, which is a pretty sweet consolation prize for, losing a model that you care a lot about. So then, we've done our injuries. Next thing, the trauma step has been done. Now we're going to look at promotions. So promotions is an opportunity for you to be able to say, hey, this guy did a really good job. Maybe they get to advance or something like this. So this allows you to promote troops in your warband up to an elite status by following these next couple of steps. This only applies, though, to troops that don't have the elite keyword. So you can't promote an elite more than once. Okay, so just put that out there right now. So if you want to promote, basically you got to start this promotion dice pool. This is where I talked about before, where glory points that you earn for glorious deeds will allow you to add an additional D6 to this promotion pool at this stage in the game. So if you got glorious deeds during the game, these are like achievements like we talked about, the things that get you glory points and also get you the ability to get this additional dice for your promotional pool. This is where you would add those up and throw those extra dice into this pool. So you're going to build your promotion pool and you're going to assign dice to your troop models. So basically you can't assign 3 dice to the same model until all the troops in your warband have at least 2 dice on them each, and so on and so forth. Okay, so there's a restriction there. Next, you're going to roll those dice, and you can roll them in any order that you choose. And as soon as one of those dice hits a 6, you stop rolling for that model, and you promote the model that you're rolling for. I'll talk about what that promotion looks like next. And you do that for each of them. So basically, you're looking for 6s. You're hunting 6s. So if you hit a 6 on a D6, that model's going to get promoted. So that's awesome, right? The important thing to note here is on that model's warband entry, you're going to track how many promotion dice you rolled for that model. The reason this is relevant is after you have rolled 5 promotion dice and not gotten a promotion on the model, the 6th time that you assign a dice to that model, automatically is a 6, you'll automatically promote. So that's kind of cool. You'll automatically get that promotion if you just have one person who just keeps tanking on the rolls. You eventually, just through attrition, this model will get a promotion when that 6th dice is added. That doesn't necessarily mean the 6th game that they've been through. It just depends on how many promotion dice your pool has and you're allowed and able to be able to assign to that model. Okay, so when they get promoted, when a troop gets promoted, they immediately are going to get that elite keyword, which will be tied to them from now on, and that means for promotions and experience and all that kinds of stuff. So this will open up some more stuff to them moving forward. They'll start with 0 experience points, but they will gain at least 1 experience point for surviving the game in which they were promoted. So while it says they start with 0, they basically will start with 1 automatically because they're here in the game in the promotion phase. So they clearly just survived. So they'll get a +1. Now, another thing to consider is if your warband has 6 or more models with elite keywords in it, you just skip the promotion step because you can't have any more models with the elite keyword. So something to think about. That means there is a limitation. You can't just basically elite out your entire army, which again, it's a good balance, which is always nice. Now, there is a list in here of units that can't be promoted based on the faction. Currently, New Antioch and Iron Sultanate don't have any restrictions, but the rest of the factions do have certain models which you're not going to be able to promote. So no matter what, they're just not going to be able to get promoted to the elite status. That's just something to be aware of. And then there are a handful of models that are with Iron Sultanate, Heretic Legion, Trench Pilgrims, and the Court, those 4 factions. There's a handful of models that have limited potential. So basically, even though they may be able to get promoted and gain experience, they can never have more than 7 experience points. So you're not going to be able to, super advance them along the way. So now we've gone through our promotions, we've done our promotion pool, and now we're going to go through our experience step. Now, I know what you're thinking. Johnny, you've been talking for like 25 minutes or something like that now about campaign. I feel like this is very convoluted. I promise you it's not. It looks intimidating the first time that you do it, but once you've done it, it goes pretty quickly, pretty fast. Okay, because everything we talk about here doesn't necessarily apply to every single model along the way, so it gets a little pretty snappy and gets moving pretty quick. Now, so we're on to the experience step. So every model that has only elites can gather experience, just a heads up. So after you've done your promotions, any elite model that took part in the game, even if they were taken out of action during the game, obviously not removed from the warband during the injury phase, but were taken out of action during the actual game that you played, they all get 1 experience point. And if any elite performed at least 1 glorious deed, they gain a 2nd experience point. So you can get up to 2 experience points per elite in a game. You're going to record that on their warband entry in the campaign tracker. And there's a series of boxes, like that would be like check boxes if you had like a paper copy of their character sheet, and circles. Whenever you hit a circle along that progression, then you're able to make an advancement roll for that model. An advancement roll is basically you're going to, roll a 2d6 and kind of see what happens with your skills, which is pretty cool the way this goes. So you go to the skill tables for the advancement roll. Say you have a model, they fill up to a circle on the progression box with experience points. Now I get to go to the advancement roll this time. So I'm going to pick 2 skill tables. So there's a number of skill tables. There's exploration skills. When you get one of these kind of affect what you do during the exploration phase, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. There's melee, depending on how you say it, and strength skills. These obviously are going to help you in combat or making your model stronger. And there's ranged skills, which are obviously going to help you during ranged combat, those kinds of things. And then you have stealth and speed skills, which are going to be your movement shenanigans that you're going to be able to capitalize on. And then you have wildcard skills. Wildcard skills are cool. They're just kind of like these random hodgepodge lists. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick 2 of these charts to be able to roll on. Okay? And just so you know, every chart, if you roll a 2, so if you snake eyes or you get boxcars, 2s or 12s, will always be a patron skill. And that goes back to what we talked about earlier at the beginning when you're picking your patron, not Patreon, excuse me. If you pick your patron, they will dictate what abilities you're going to be able to pick from if you roll a patron skill during the skill phase, the advancement phase, if you will. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick 2 of those tables, like I said. You're going to roll 2d6 for each table, and you're going to see what the results are. So basically, you're going to come out from the back end of this set of rolls with 2 options to pick from. Okay. If you roll, obviously, a skill that the model already has, you use the next lowest skill from that table that the model does not have instead. And if the patron roll is picked, or a patron skill is rolled, then you're going to be able to pick one from your patron list. Okay, so it'll be like another list you get to look at. But functionally, you're going to get 2 things. You say you pick something off the speed table and something off of the melee and strength table. You're going to roll 2d6 twice. First one for the melee and strength, second one for the speed. And you're going to have 2 abilities that are going to come away from that. You're going to pick one of them. That's the one that you're going to be able to assign to your warband. Pretty straightforward, moves pretty quick, not that bad. So after you do the advancement rolls for anybody who gets it, and quite frankly, you might get one model every couple of games that will have this opportunity to do this. So again, this is something that oftentimes you're just going to blow right past, but you will get to do it eventually. So after this part of the post-campaign, or the campaign phase, the post-game phase, you're going to move on to the reinforcement steps. Now, the reinforcement steps, you have the option to call for reinforcements if you need to. So this is a completely optional thing to do. You do not have to do it. It's basically, this is the catch-up mechanism that they have worked into the campaign. This is where I was saying that they've allowed you a means to be able to kind of come back from the precipice of loss. So if you, say, have been playing your warband for a few games now, you've really just unfortunately tanked on the injury rolls. You've had a lot of models that were taken out of action during your games, and you've lost quite a few models from your warband. This is when you're going to want to start considering the reinforcements phase. So basically what you're able to do is you're basically able to look at what the threshold value of the game that you're getting ready to go into is, and the difference between what you currently have, and you're going to be able to get that much makeup money effectively, that many makeup ducats to be able to replenish your warband. So now this comes at a price, though. Don't think like, oh, that's not a big deal. So you have to discard any battle kit that you have in your arsenal on your warband roster. Now, if you have not bought a bunch of extra gear, or you have not shifted a bunch of gear off of current models, because that's something you can do when you buy a new battle kit, we'll get to it a little bit later, is you're able to kind of like start moving equipment around for the most part. There's a few things that are like tied to models specifically, but generally speaking, you can kind of start moving equipment around and armor and things like that around, which is really kind of cool. So if you have anything sitting in your arsenal, because you can just kind of like walk around with gear in a box basically to use whenever you want later on, it will be abandoned and you're going to lose it at this phase if you decide to do a reinforcement. So something to think about. You're going to reduce the number of ducats in your strongbox to 0. So however many ducats you have that you've gotten from exploration phase, which we're going to talk about in a minute, you lose it all. So now that you've done that, okay, we've discarded anything in our arsenal as far as gear. We have discarded all of our ducats. We're down to 0. What you're going to do is you're going to total up what is left of your warband. And you're going to subtract that number from whatever the threshold value is of the next game you're going to play. So for instance, if the next game you're going to play is 1,000, right? And say you've got a warband of, 600-ish ducats. Say you're at 600 even because, magic. Then you're going to have 400 ducats you're going to be able to use to replenish your warband. And that means buy new models, buy new battle kit for those models. To be clear, the models that you have retained in your warband still have all of their battle kit. Nothing has happened to that. Nothing has happened to those models. They're still good to go. Nothing changes there. It's just the unspent ducats that you had go away. The unused equipment that were sitting in your arsenal go away. And now you have this difference in ducats from the overall cost of your warband and the cost of the next threshold that allows you to basically go buy new models, go buy those new models, new equipment, and that sort of thing to be able to create. So anything that you don't use, though, any of the ducats that you get, those 400 ducats that you just got, right, that you don't use are going to be lost. So you don't get to save that ducat money or surplus that you didn't spend and put it into like your treasure trove or anything like that, okay? So in the context of a reinforcement sequence of the reinforcement step, you will lose any of that unspent makeup money that you get. Now, other consequence of calling in reinforcements, of doing the reinforcements, is you have to forgo the exploration step and the quartermaster step completely. Those are two that we're about to talk about. And basically what that means, though, is the exploration step is the one you get to roll in some charts, see what you find, and it can be some really good stuff. Quartermaster step is when you get to basically buy new gear and things like that. But, the quartermaster step, effectively, you're getting some new models, and you can buy them battle kits, so you're kind of sort of getting that roped into the reinforcements step. As far as the exploration step goes, that could be a hit or miss depending on how you roll, as if you get anything really good or just get something mediocre. But it's pretty good, usually, the exploration step. So that is a little bit of a cost there as well. All right, so we are through the reinforcement steps, and we're going to move on to exploration. So moving on to the exploration step, you have a chance to basically explore the territory that's around you. This is another piece of that narrative flavor that comes into the game. You're able to kind of look around, explore that sort of stuff. So in the exploration phase, what you're going to do is you're going to figure out how many exploration dice you have. Now, see, there's more dice involved here. You're going to roll those dice, and then using allies, equipments, and any exploration skills that you have that might modify it, then you're going to look at the table, and you're going to collect your loot equal to 10 times your exploration roll as well. So there's specific exploration stuff that you're going to find, plus you might be able to get some monies. So the way it basically works is you're going to find out, there's a little chart here. How many games have you played? Have you played 1 to 2 games? You get 3 exploration dice to roll. If you've played 3 to 5, you get 4, so on and so forth. It's going to kind of go up in increased incremental elements. So there are certain exploration skills, when we talked about the skill tree earlier, that you can get that will, say, increase the amount of dice you put into this pool, because this is another dice pool situation, okay? And then you're going to, once you figure that out, you get how many dice you have, you're going to be able to roll them. When you make your roll, you have the advantage of being able to re-roll one of the exploration dice if you want. And if you won the game that you just played, that this exploration phase is a part of, the post-game campaign phase of, you get to actually re-roll a second exploration dice, which is pretty great. But know that you can't re-roll a dice that you've already re-rolled, right? Like you don't re-roll a re-roll. That rule applies here, just like in most games. So, for example, if it's your third game, you roll 4 exploration dice, you get a 5, 3, a 1, and a 1. You won the game, so you can re-roll the 2 1s if you want, getting a 4 and a 5, which your exploration roll is now a 5, 5, 4, 3, which equals 17. Congratulations. Now that you have got your baseline roll of 17, you can use any mercenaries that you might have, any battle kit, or any exploration skills, and you'll use all of them combined to modify that roll whichever way is appropriate. And that will give you what your final number is. And here you consult the exploration table. So the table is going to tell you there's a secondary table that allows you to figure out what the locations are that you're going to be searching on. So say you've played, this is just your second game, 1 to 2, you're going to have common exploration locations. 3 to 5, you can roll in common or rare. 6 to 9, it's going to be rare. 10 plus, it's rare legendary exploration spots. You're going to click on that, or you're going to open it, turn over to it, whatever you may be, and you're going to look at what the numbers are, right? And it's going to have numbers all the way up to 20. And you might find a heavy weapons cache, for instance, okay? Or you might find a specific location, or an individual, or a merchant, things like that, which are going to give you options to be able to purchase things, and you're going to get extra abilities and all of that kinds of stuff. And you're going to be able to move forward and get your ducats afterwards, again, like we mentioned beforehand. And that's going to be 10 times what your exploration roll is. So again, we talked about rolling 17, you get 170 ducats. You would find whatever that location is, get whatever the benefit of that location, and then you would go on. So oftentimes you're going to find battle kit, or you might find glory items that you can add to your arsenal. And they're always free, so they don't cost things, right? So if you find Samson's jawbone, for instance, you don't have to pay the glory that's associated with it. And you're able to record all of this stuff on your campaign manager under your warband of who gets what, all that kinds of stuff. And then, like I said, you'll get your ducats. And then you're going to move on to the next phase of the game, which is the quartermaster step. So the quartermaster step, you can recruit new models, purchase new battle kit and glory items, allocate that stuff to models so you can kind of move your stuff around. And you can do this in any order you like, so there's no restriction. You can swap stuff back and forth. That's not a problem. And you can retire any model that has 2 battle scars. So if those elites that we talked about earlier that have been taken out of action but didn't die in the injury phase and get those battle scars, if you get them to 2 battle stars and you say, hey, I don't want to risk that 3rd battle scar in this next game, I'm just going to go ahead and retire them now. And what you do is you decide to remove them from your warband, and you're able to sell or reallocate their battle kit and glory items before you retire them. So you can sell gear as a quartermaster step, so you can sell it back and get a partial of your refund. Or you can store that equipment into your arsenal and then redistribute it as you like. No problem there. So basically you get to retain all of their stuff and you just get rid of them, but you just have to hire a new person. So you can hire a new recruit during this phase as well. Just like you did when you first started your warband. There's nothing really different than that. You're going to pay the normal amount. The key thing is that if you're looking at a warband entry that has a 0 to 1 limitation or 0 to 2 limitation, whatever the case may be, you always can only have 1 or 2 of those. So if you already have one of those, like say an Anchorite Shrine, for instance, you can only have 1 of those typically in your faction or your warband. If I've already got an Anchorite Shrine, I can't go buy another Anchorite Shrine, even though I'm in the quartermaster step. You're going to be able to buy battle kit, which works just like you do at the beginning of the game. You can sell battle kit or glory items, and if you do, you get half the cost back if you're selling them, and you round up, like in most things. So if you're selling an item that has a 10 ducat cost, you're going to be able to get 5 back. Same thing, if it's 2 glory, you can get a glory back. You put that on your roster sheet, you can buy new things. You can purchase any glory items just like you would be able to purchase regular battle kit items if you have glory points to spend. You allocate all of these things. If you have army like, say, the New Antioch, who work in fire teams, then there's a couple other factions and sub-factions that have fire teams. You're able to allocate new fire teams. And then you're going to go over to the roster phase, and we're going to wrap things up there. The roster phase or step is basically just that. You're just going to double check to make sure everything's updated on your roster, and you're good to go. And you're ready to rock and roll in the next part of your campaign game. And that would just be getting your new opponent, setting up your scenario, and going forward, and you run through this stuff again. So basically, while it sounds like there's a lot, generally speaking, between most games, especially early on, you don't really have to do many of these things initially. So you kind of breeze through them. So it actually kind of has, based on the grow nature that it's set up around your warband, it kind of has this slow grow approach to it where you kind of incorporate some of these things over time. So by the time you're using some of them for the first time, you've already been exposed to going through this campaign phase between games more than once, which is really nice that you kind of get exposure to it, but you don't necessarily have to do it the first time, right? Now, I have played campaigns where people were completely annihilated and got terrible injury rolls and have had to basically start their entire warband from scratch. But those are the extreme exceptions, not the rules. Generally speaking, you're only going to end up having to do a couple of these things off the get-go. And you're going to be able to kind of dial them in a little bit as you go later on in it as the games grow. And it actually kind of becomes pretty cool, and you get to develop a real narrative story about the characters and why they got the injuries. It offers great modeling opportunity if you're into kit bashing and doing things that are really unique like that with your models. Models get names. I've talked about that before, where all my models start getting names when they start getting promoted. You get to kind of do cool stuff to the miniatures to kind of reflect that. And you really get this kind of cool stuff. You can attach to some of these guys too, which is kind of silly to say, but then something bad happens to them. And it's a very, very bad day, when that happens. So it's really cool. It really helps add a story to your warband. And the great thing in the campaign manager in the Trench Companion app is there's a whole space in there where you're able to type in your lore, things that have happened, and notes on each of the games, and you can kind of like build your lore story for your warband as they go. So a couple of words on, or thoughts on, running campaigns and what that looks like. You could very easily, especially if you're just starting a campaign off locally at your local shop, or if you're doing a TTS, a tabletop simulator game, you could very easily just pick the scenarios you want to play at the very beginning, especially if you're doing this in a way that you don't want it to be overly complicated for people, for like new players. By all means, you can go in and just say, hey, we're going to play a 5-game scenario or campaign. These are the scenarios we're going to play in order. Get your buddy and just run down that list. There is nothing saying that you have to do an entire 12 games or something along those lines. Totally fine to mix it up however you want. There are other things you can do, like what I did locally for me at my local shop. I ran a campaign. We had somewhere in the 20s of players, about 25 players, something like that, 20, 25. And we did a narrative campaign, like a global narrative campaign. What I mean by that is there was a map, there was a global narrative that was occurring between the faithful and the fallen, and you could invade territories. You got extra victory points for that, and long term, at the very end of the campaign, there was an individual winner who had the most campaign victory points as a fire team, as a warband. And then there was the overall point score system for the faithful and for the fallen factions. And so you had an overarching winner. It's like a side of the battle that won over all these scenarios and over all these weeks. And the story there is that for us, it was called the Somme Offensive, which is built around the Battle of Somme. And the outcome of that will paint the beginning of the next campaign scenario and benefits. And there were some specialty things and some house rules we put into it and stuff like that, which is kind of cool. So it created some flavor. So you could always look at doing something like that. It's not very hard to throw something along those lines together and play some sort of like rolling narrative campaign in addition to just a, who's the best warband at doing this kind of a thing. So it's really, really cool. I really love the campaign system. I can't say enough about it. It's where I think the bread and butter of this game, the joy of this game really comes in. Can't speak highly enough of it. And I would definitely recommend get your learning games in. Get a couple of rounds of whatever under your belt, and then just jump into a campaign, even if it's just 2 of you. It just makes a lot of fun for the narrative story and the ability to progress your characters. It gives you lots of like modeling opportunities, not just with the models as they progress and they get promoted and things happen, they get their battle scars and whatnot, but also just in terrain. It gives you a lot of cool terrain opportunities because you can kind of look ahead, see what the scenarios are, and build maps for those exact things. It gives you an opportunity to do some hobbying. Especially if you space it out, this could also be a good way, to be a motivation to build your terrain catalog or to, build your warband beyond just, the basic models that you got initially, off the bat when you first started, something like that. Do some customization of those models as you go and so on and so forth. So highly recommend campaign. Jump into it when you can. It's a great time. And feel free to hit us up on the Discord for any of the patrons if you have questions about campaign or the Battle of Somme that I did, whatever it may be. Just let me know. We're happy to talk about it, and we'll hopefully be having a little teaser here, of information for you in coming weeks about a local campaign that we're going to be doing ourselves, Jesse and I, with a group of our friends, and keep you posted and let you know how that goes. Now, I've got nothing else to say about campaigns at this point, although I'll happily answer any questions you have down the road. But I say probably now time to move over to the Trench Shrine, and let's talk about something in the grimdark space. So, speaking of customization of models and getting into like a narrative space and a narrative vibe, something that you could maybe use for inspiration, not just from a campaign perspective, but also just from a gameplay perspective or a modeling perspective for your warbands as a whole, especially if like you like this idea of doing customization to your models, but maybe you don't have any experience or background in kit bashing or sculpting or any sort of thing like that. A good place that you can look at is the 28 community. So the 28 community, also known as the like hashtag 28 if you're on Instagram, those kinds of things, social media, it's all based off, so the bulk of it comes from the 28 magazine. So 28 Magazine is a indie zine about tabletop gaming, miniatures, role-playing games, art, those kinds of things. It's very seeped in the grimdark, very influenced by John Blanche and Blanche Jitsu painting style. It was kind of spawned from some of the fringe grimdark games from back in the day that came under like Games Workshop, for instance. And so you talk about like Mordheim, Inquisitor, these kinds of games that leaned heavily into that grimdark aesthetic back in the day, and heavily influenced with people that were doing lots of conversion, right? And it was all centered around that 28 millimeter scale wargaming, so which is the bulk of wargaming that you run into. Most games are in a 28 millimeter, give or take. We're not gonna get into like hero scale and things like that, but a 28 millimeter scale. And all of these older games that spawned the 28 movement, the 28 magazine, and this kinds of thing, like I said, Mordheim, Inquisitor 28, all that kinds of stuff, all kind of, spawned from that space. And this is a community-run endeavor that has just exploded. So I'm going to link in the show notes below 28 Magazine, so you can kind of go over there and see what they did. They had a Kickstarter recently where you could get some of their publication in print, and they had a 28 Magazine, like hardback coffee table style book that they did, because previously 28 Mag was only online. So everything was online. It was free, right? It's free to the community. Really, really cool. There's lots of Discords out there where you can get free rule sets out of the 28 community. So this would be things like, if you want to find updated rules for Mordheim, Inquisitor 28, if you want to get into Etherpunks, or Turnip 28, which is where, like you're playing turnips and potatoes and they have got swords and stuff. Necropolis, there is just a myriad of games in a myriad of genres that are all under the umbrella of the 28 movement. And it's really cool because it allows you to express so much creativity in modeling, to get so much variety in gaming, and in a community that most stuff is free. You don't even have to pay for it. And and they're supported. So like the Morkbork guys and Forbidden Psalm, these are all things that were born out of the 28 movement as well. You can see their stuff out there. There's just basically, if it is a grimdark game that has been around from like the 80s and 90s to today, it is probably influenced greatly this development of this 28 movement. So there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of art, literal like tangible art that is out there that is supportive of this, that is in that grimdark style. There are games like Sunrot, which is a card-based kind of rule RPG light style game that is artistically influenced by the 28 movement and grimdark. So there's a lot of different stuff out there that you can find that is all interwoven in the 28 movement. So I would definitely encourage you to check it out. Look around, check on Reddit. I'm pretty sure there's a subreddit for 28 out there as well. And you can really find some really cool stuff out there to kind of dip your toes in. And if nothing else, just use it as inspiration for your Trench Crusade models, what you're playing, how you're painting, those kinds of things. You could look at it, like again, just from an art perspective. If you're just into art as a whole, there's lots of good stuff out there that you could find and you could get posted out, hang up, all kinds of stuff. And while, I haven't seen the 28 movement delve into music, that's something we're obviously certainly covering here because we're definitely heavily influenced by music. But it's something else that's out there that you might be able to find some influence on, which would be, pretty cool, I would say. So I know that this was a lot of me talking today. I apologize. I hope that the campaign stuff was pretty clear and that you're able to get an idea of what it would look like to run a campaign. That's a lot of fun. I definitely highly recommend it. And I know that the Trench Shrine section was a little short, but like I said, I know you're probably getting tired of hearing my voice and looking forward to Jesse coming back in the next episode. But I want to let you know where you can find us regardless. You can, again, join us over on a Patreon or YouTube and everywhere that you listen to podcasts. If you have questions, you can reach out to us on any of those, in the comment sections on any of those, or at saintsand7s@gmail.com. We would extra special like to thank the band Zao for our intro and outro music that they have so graciously allowed us to use. They're a great band. We will come back and we will discuss Zao's discography in a Trench Shrine in the future, or maybe even a full bonus episode. I just didn't want to do it without Jesse here because both of us are big fans of their work. Help us spread the word of the show. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed on the platforms, YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is. Give us a rating if you can. We'd really appreciate a 5-star. Leave us a review. All these things help the algorithms that are out there do the things that they do and allow us to get the show to more people and hopefully spread that community that we're really here to try and help build in positivity about something really grimdark. I know it's a juxtaposition, but that's how we roll over here. For Jesse, you can find him on Discord and Longshanks at Jesse Aiken. That's JESSEEAKIN. And Jesse's got some podcasts, man. Go, if you've got any interest in Marvel Crisis Protocol, listen to Fury's Finest. It's about everything Marvel Crisis Protocol in the Marvel Universe. It's a great show. It's with his buddy Chris Bruffett. They're great guys. They do a great show over there. Check it out. Also, Hello There, a Star Wars Shatterpoint and Legion podcast about everything Star Wars and Shatterpoint and Legion. A very good show as well. And then Truth and Reconciliation, a Halo Flashpoint podcast about Halo Flashpoint, the miniatures war game, and the Halo universe with Kevin Caldwell as his co-host over there. Also great show, great people, great community over there. And then myself, you can find me, Johnny, on Discord at TheRealJohnny5 with a period, because I'm the real one. Don't forget that. And you can check out my other show, You're Such a Nerd. It's the definitive geek culture variety podcast, covering all things geek culture. If we're a little here, we're a little there, all over the place. So if you want to go check that out, that would be great. Thanks for hanging out with us as we explore all things Trench Crusade. Keep your heads down and stay safe, Saints.